Okay, everybody, welcome to another edition. I'm going to pause for a moment just to double check all my settings here say that we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Just let me get a minute to make sure everything's up and running as it should. Okay, looks like we're good there on Facebook. We are good on LinkedIn. Okay, we're good. We are good. Laura, welcome to Beyond the Resume, third episode. And for those that are attending, whether you're attending here or watching this later, I'll tell you, I wanted to have Laura on a long time ago. I talked to her months ago before I even had this idea for the show. We had talked about a lot of the things that she's going to talk to you about today, and I was just incredibly impressed. So first off, everyone attending, thank you for attending for Beyond the Resume. My goal here is to talk to service members and veterans about issues that I went through and obstacles, but also to talk to experts to give advice on things that either I don't know about or cutting edge new challenges. And Laura is going to talk to you today about one of those. So Laura, welcome to the show. Thank you again for being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Scott. Thanks for having me. I'm a veteran. I'm married to a retired service member. We live here in Florida. Moved down here last year so I could take care of my mom full time. And I love giving back to our military community and helping veterans in any way that I can.
Yeah, and you do an incredible job, as we'll talk about here in a minute. Yeah. And so how did you get started in here? Because when I talked to you, I was expecting to talk to someone who's been doing this for 50 or so years. I had spent 2 years with the best mentors, VA experts, everything. And then you just gave me 4 letters, and we'll talk about those 4 letters in a minute. I said, never heard of this. So how did you get into this, and where does this expertise come from?
I worked within the CSRC and the TSGLI program for the Army for 4.5 years. So I gained a lot of knowledge working in both programs. And when we moved to Florida, I had to resign, my position. And I started, doing life insurance to help people with SBP, and I'd ask people like, have you applied for CSRC? And the number one response I got was, "What's that? I don't know what that is." And I was like, "Okay, well, let's talk about that." And so, since then, I've helped almost 1,000 service members and veterans understand, that program and whether or not, it's beneficial to apply. Just kind of go into all of that with them. So, yeah.
And like most of them, I never heard of CSRC either. I knew that I had to check out with my commander. I knew I had to go to medical and dental. I knew I had to turn in my equipment. I needed to make sure, whether I took the right amount of leave, like those basic things that we all talked about. We had to do. And I did them all. And then you get decisions to make about skill bridge, depending on where you're at in your career and the service rules. Are you going to take terminal leave? Like all of these things, debt, finance, like we think of all these things. Never. And I'm not pointing the finger, but never was I awake when CSRC was mentioned. I didn't absorb it. What the heck is CSRC?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Most service members, when they transition, they're in the same boat, or they get misinformation. Or if they do hear about it in like a retirement class, nobody's really able to answer questions on it. So they feel lost. You got 50 things coming at you at once, and it's hard to kind of, differentiate like what's important and, what these programs are. But CSRC is for retirees, either medical retirees or like a regular 20-year retiree. And it's a special monthly compensation that's tax-free. It's very beneficial for people. Probably the most it's beneficial for is medical retirees under 20 years. If you're not receiving military retirement and only your VA disability, CRC can kind of help reinstate that. So you can actually get a CRC check, kind of like a retirement check, and your VA disability check as well. And for regular 20-year retirees, it could potentially make some or all of your retirement tax-free, which is pretty beneficial.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And because the whole system varies for the US veteran depending on what state you're in, right?
Yes.
So my state of North Carolina, they don't tax your pension. Other states, depending on your VA rating, may not tax your property taxes. Like there's so many variables to think about.
Yeah.
And I don't think my knowledge of CRSC that I have today would have altered my decision on where to live and what to do, but it would have been helpful. And I saw a moment ago a message from a good teammate of mine, First Sergeant Brandon Smart, who's getting ready to retire from the Marine Corps soon. So I'm glad leaders like him are hearing about this, not just because he is going to retire soon, but he's a first sergeant and he leads a lot of Marines.
Yeah.
So hopefully people can talk about this. So let's go step by step here. All right. Corporal Stalker retires and gets out, medically discharged, whatever, gets out. And what should I be doing? Let's say I've got a couple combat tours. I'm in pretty good shape, but I've got some injuries and some nagging injuries. Mm-hmm. What do you think this individual should be doing?
Well, CRC is not a VA program, but it has a lot to do with kind of like the VA. So whatever you get for a VA disability and percentage, like your condition percentage, CRC can mirror all of those conditions and percentages. So if you get 50% PTSD from, the VA, you can get 50% PTSD from CRSC. So just knowing that, for example, VA presumptive conditions, IBS, sinusitis, rhinitis, all of those are automatic conditions that a lot of people don't think to claim, which is very, it can be very important, especially if you're deployed at a certain place at a certain time. So knowing all of that stuff can be very helpful to okay, what do I need to claim, for my VA that's also going to help out CRSC? And, linking certain things like headaches, if you have headaches from PTSD, try to make sure that that's granted as a secondary condition to PTSD or TBIs, because if you have an awardable condition for CRSC, anything secondary is going to be automatically awarded as well. So just kind of knowing, just make sure you get, your documents, go to the doctors anytime you have any ailments or injuries or issues going on, get that stuff documented. And, really, really knowing too, how your retirement is going to be calculated, whether it's your high 3 or your blended retirement system, whatever it is, you can calculate that. And if you're, a medical retiree, and you're not going to receive, your retirement because of a VA waiver, you've given up that to receive your VA disability pay, you got to know what that number is. And depending on your CRSC percentage, you can probably get all of that back. So you can have 2 checks.
And we're going to go into a little bit more, and the questions are starting to pop in here. But to any service member in uniform today, quite frankly, to any veteran, I would offer, whether you're talking and reaching out to someone like Laura, and we'll talk about that later, find an expert in here, because you really need to understand the situation for you. It varies for each person.
Yes.
And I'm a big proponent of the integrity of the system, right? So this is not about finding fake injuries. This is not about gaming the system and finding a way to get, I don't believe in any of that. I'm proud of my service. Did 31 years. I feel really good. And I have a lot of teammates that served and got different injuries, and they have earned the VA status and potentially CRSC. So please maintain the integrity of the process.
Yes.
But you need to understand, as a veteran, as a service member, what potentially could be out there for you. And so talking and having scheduled this meeting with someone on base, someone that represents the VA, the medical, someone like Laura that's an expert here, so that you have an understanding of what you can expect when you get out, when you retire, what your income may be. And some of that income, as Laura talked about, could be non-taxable. Laura, go ahead, please.
Oh, sorry. And injuries don't need to be from combat. Okay. They can be from training, airborne operations. If you have initial medical documentation for like an incident that happened, combatives, tactical road march, all of that stuff, if you have a disability rating for something, like your back injury from, a bad PLF or something like that, like all of that, can potentially be a percentage for CRSC. And, a lot of people think it's just for combat. I have to have a Purple Heart, or, I have to have a combat award. Some people get CRSC payments and they've never been deployed before.
Yeah, that's a key point, right? Because training is training for combat, and it's official duty. And so again, the key here is when or if you get injuries. I remember when the Marine Corps Martial Art Program first came out. I was at 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, 29 Palms, and we were beating the living hell out of each other. We literally had a staff sergeant had a heart attack in the middle of training, and we just kept going. We were just crushing each other. It was like, how hard can you break? It's tapered off a little bit now, smartly, so that it's done safely and often on mats. But my point is, all of those little things don't count for anything if you don't go to medical and get them documented.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And, I've been, my 1 year mark to my retirement ceremony will be in a few weeks here. And again, I feel great, but I've noticed since I've retired, I do have a lot more headaches and some other things. Luckily, those little things were documented in training events and combat, so that when I go to the VA or I use my TRICARE, it's covered underneath that, and it's taken care of, especially under the VA.
Yeah.
So, thank you. Laura, we had a question here, and I know Siham, I keep messing, I apologize, ma'am, but Mrs. Lewis, Siham Lewis, is asked about even PTSD. So how is that covered under CRSC?
Every branch of service is different, and they take care of their own, claims. But PTSD, if you do have a combat award, that's going to be the easiest way to get PTSD for CRSC. Normally, they're gonna, award PTSD for people that have been downrange, depending on different circumstances that happen. If you don't have a combat award, the next best thing is, submit documentation from like award, like NCOER, OER, a chain of command statement from like a first sergeant, company commander, or higher. Nobody statements. It's not the VA, so nobody statements. But if you can get a statement that, lists exactly what happened, for your PTSD, then it might be able to be granted.
Awesome. Sam, thank you for that. Thank you for making it easier on me. I don't have that challenge. My last name is spelled like the federal crime, so I've really had no challenges with names in my life. So thank you. Great question there. And so the theme, I think, of all of this, whether it is VA, whether it is CRSC, regardless, you got to get it documented. You got to get it documented. And maybe at the moment you can't, like, okay, I understand you're in training. Events, I remember being in Al Assad and we got blown up. That wasn't the moment to go to the doctor and get it documented. But I go later, months later, or whatever, and talk about it so that it's taken care of.
And that's okay within a reasonable timeline, after deployments, after missions, stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I don't even know what this is. And so, Laura, I don't like putting my guest on the spot. So if you don't know what CRDP is.
Yeah, I know exactly what CRDP is. Okay. So
I
Scott,
brought my A game today. I got Laura here. Go ahead, ma'am.
Scott, you are receiving CRDP. Okay.
Okay.
CRDP is if you are a regular 20-year retiree and you're receiving at least a 50% VA disability, your retirement is kind of categorized as CRDP, which means you're entitled to receive all of your VA and all of your retirement.
Okay. So hopefully, for whatever reason, it just came up as LinkedIn user, not loser. Apologize there. That's explaining CRDP there. So you've been doing this for a bit of time now. What are some other things that service members, as they get ready to transition, common mistakes you see them making, or things they're not thinking about?
Ooh, there's quite a bit. So just, not getting stuff documented. That's probably the number one thing. I think, that's very important. Even if it's at the end of your career, just start getting it documented. If you get it, it helps out the VA. It's going to help out CSRC. Those are all key things right there. And, just learning about different programs or talking, like you said, talking to people that know different programs. I help a lot of people with, whether it's life insurance to, show them the difference between that and SBP, not pushy at all, but just the education, because we didn't have it, or TSGLI. Right. For traumatic injuries. A lot of people don't know stuff about that it's, your injuries can happen on or off duty. So while when I talk with people, we have like a 45-minute conversation and I kind of go over all this stuff. And, it's for TSGLI, a lot of people don't know about that one either. But, if you have a traumatic injury and let's say you're hospitalized for at least 15 consecutive days, that's a $25,000 payout. TBI clinics count. There's certain stipulations, but a lot of people don't know, like, okay, I've had a TBI, it's documented. I go to, a clinic, inpatient clinic for 15 days, depending on which one it is. They don't know that they can kind of get paid out, for being there. So it's, just talk to your buddies. I think other people's experiences are really important. I don't know.
Yeah, I would talk to veterans that have gone through it as well. Folks, old guys like me and old gals that have gone through this could offer some guidance on how to do this. Some great comments here, from Rob there. Post-deployment medical records are key to some of these minor issues that linger. He's absolutely right. The challenge I always face is as soon as you got back, you were PCSing somewhere else or going to a school, and then you move on. And so keeping track of that is critical. Chad, even if you're 100%, make sure you get everything rated. That is so true. I could not agree more with you. Medical is not going to get cheaper. I think we can all agree on that. That's not a political statement. It's going to continue to cost an arm and a leg, literally. Yeah. And so if the Department of Veteran Affairs has deemed that an injury to you is done in the line of duty, there's a contract with that service member. It's a contract to this nation that we swore, and they will take care of you. They're supposed to take care of you. So please don't just stop if you do get 100%. If you have legitimate injuries, if you have legitimate things, make sure they're seen. And the question I'd ask you, what are you seeing other veterans, service members not do? What I see and continue to see is people doing it too late and waiting too late to get it done. A lot of people will tell you start 1 year out. I'm a believer in 2 years. And the main reason why is because of this medical stuff. And the fact that you have to you'll get a medical appointment and then they'll say that part of the knee needs a specialist and that specialist needs to see an orthodontist, blah, blah, blah. And you have to see 3 people for one thing, and that takes 3 months.
Right. Or if you actually knew like what these programs did, earlier on in your career, like, hey, I could get compensated for this later on down the line. That's really important too. Like it should all be talked about. I don't know, maybe a yearly basis. But I want to go back to what Chad said. A lot of things that I see as well is people, their VSOs or whatever, that they will stop at 100%. Like what I'm at 100%. What else do I need? I'm getting, the max. But if you were to, if you still had stuff that was wrong with you, make sure you do address it, because those percentages that you might have been getting or could have been getting could help out with CRSC, because it's calculated the same way as the VA does their crazy math.
Yeah.
So 1 + 1 is not 2.
No, it's not.
So all those percentages, really do add up, and they do help out with CRSC.
Right. I'm going to skip something and come back to it. James, brother, I didn't know that was you. It just shows up as LinkedIn user. So James is my old teammate from Space Command there in the 4. Not sure why it does that, but thanks for joining us today. Hey, let's talk about Nicholas's question here. And I instantly wanted to answer, but you're the guest here. Do you have any thoughts on what is the best approach to getting old injuries documented? As an example, right, I served last century in the 1900s, and we still had big paper, and we were running around, and then at some point it went digital and half the stuff disappeared. What should the person do?
Get statements from your chain of command if you can. National Archives, they might have some as well. If even if it's not there and something did happen, try to get statements. The VA, they do buddy statements. Other programs, they like CRC does not. So try to reach out as soon as possible to anybody in your chain of command to try to get a statement to kind of help fill in those blanks.
Nicholas, what I will tell you, sir, is what I did, because I think a lot of us older veterans are going through a lot of that. At some point, it'll catch up to when everything was digital. But I had a couple of significant injuries from martial arts, again, early 1990s. And they were training related. So I would write out what happened and show that I was with that unit. And they allowed that entry into my medical record because of what it was. There wasn't like an investigation. I don't even know how they would have investigated it.
Yes.
But again, operating from a mindset of integrity and doing the right thing, hopefully that helps. That's what I did, and it worked. So I would consider make sure you spend some time thinking about those injuries that they can't find documentation for, and then you need to go back and say, well, how did this happen? All right. So Chad is saying in here that those injuries are rated different than the VA. The CRSC injuries are rated from the VA. Is that accurate? What do you think?
Yeah. So if you get a VA, so remember, CRC is not the VA. They run on their own set of rules and guidelines and standards that's separate from the VA and the med board process. So if on your VA disabilities or conditions, it says combat related, or even for when you medically retire, it does not mean CRSC is going to see that as combat related. Okay, they have their own set of guidelines. So a lot of people get hung up on that too. Well, the VA said it's combat related, or the med board. It does not mean CRSC is going to see it that way.
Right. Yeah, these are totally separate entities, totally separate pots of money, totally separate legalities, everything.
Yeah,
everything there. But if done properly, and you are able to show that you rate 100% CRSC, and you have 100% VA, that sort of thing, that could be a significant life-altering change in terms of the compensation you get, and then that could alter the decisions you make into retirement. You may decide, I'm not going to work the 9 to 5 anymore, or you may decide to work the 9 to 12. I mean, you have different options, and it's nice to have those options. How do you see that impacting veterans?
Medical retirees, I see that impacting them probably the most when it comes to pay. If you're not receiving, like I said, if you're not receiving your full retirement or any of your retirement, then, you could potentially be receiving what you would have been receiving for retirement at that time, plus 6 years of back pay. So I just helped, a friend out. She retired a few years ago, and she was able to get $32,000 in back pay, and now getting, I think it's like $600 a month, for CRSC. Other people, like there's a guy that I helped out, he was able to get, over $50,000 in back pay because he was almost at that 6 year, limit for when you can receive back pay.
I'm typing in one here.
For 20-year retirees.
Go ahead, please.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
For 20-year retirees, it's super beneficial as well. Most 20-year regular retirees need anywhere, usually a 90 to 100% to make it beneficial. That helps tremendously. Like when you retire, if you could get, most or all of your retirement tax free, that could put you into a lower tax bracket. If you are receiving your full retirement, you're not going to receive any back pay, from CRSC.
And that's something, again, you need to, each person, I highly suggest, strongly recommend that you sit down with an expert to talk about your situation. If you're married, I would have your spouse there too, because you need to make these decisions. And these do lead into TSP conversations, into SGLI and the insurance conversation. I always recommend getting this stuff done before you get civilian life insurance as well, which is what I did. And for my entire family, don't have to, but it's a recommendation because my thought process is that if they see X percentage, they may not want to provide me insurance.
They tend to be a lot higher,
Right.
ratings, like after you do, get your VA disability benefits and everything. But it's good to know. We didn't know. My husband didn't know when he retired. We didn't know anything about life insurance, SVP, and he retired during COVID. So there was no help from anity.
Yeah.
And so we took SVP, and then I learned about life insurance, and I was like, I was like, man, I had no clue about SVP and how, like, you pay your premiums, but once you receive the benefit, that part's taxed too. And so that's why I got into that part-time, just to educate people. So that's like my main priority. Like, okay, so here's what you'd be receiving for SVP. Here's what you could receive for life insurance. Here's the difference. Go over everything. Some people qualify for life insurance. Some people don't, though. So don't ever give up all that you could be entitled to until you can have a better product.
Yeah. And on that, everyone can at least get VGLI. So that's the one thing that's guaranteed, no matter how bad off you are. That was the one thing that was set aside for all of us. It does cost more for that reason, but it is an option. So I've been checking all the other social media platforms that this is going live to. And my man, Brandon, First Arm Brandon Smart, asked if we can talk about this question that you can see there. So it's, for those that can't see right now, can you talk a bit about the difference between being seen, documented, and diagnosed by medical? Sometimes we're confused by which of these applies to our records. And for what it's worth, Brandon is a Marine. We often, when we're in the field in an infantry unit, and we're not feeling good, the doc will just throw a couple Motrin at us, and maybe we've been seen, but have you been documented? So talk about that, if you would, Laura.
Well, I was a medic, so I know that all too well. Just kind of fix them up real quick, send them out. Hey, dog, don't put it in my records. Stuff like that. I'm going down a mission. But it has to be in your records, unless they give you like the SOAP note, maybe a copy of the SOAP note, like here you go. It's, you want to, even though you were seen, you want to make sure that stuff does get into your records. And if it's not, check your records. I always tell people, after your doctor's appointments, check to see what they wrote, make sure everything is in there and it's all correct. If you're in the field or, on a mission or training, and, your doc is like, taking care of you, like, hey, let me get a copy of that SOAP note so I can at least put it in my records.
Yeah. I think this next one here is from James as well. It still says LinkedIn user. And this brought back a memory of mine, my first sergeant major in the Marine Corps, who got an award. Literally, it was almost like a letter of appreciation for leading a squad through a minefield in Vietnam, which is just incredible. And he got like a letter of appreciation. But James's point here is from an Army perspective, and quite frankly, I think it's from any perspective, awards and evaluations often contain critical information, particularly during combat operations. And so if you have that award that shows you were in that combat operation, or you ran a training event or something, you got some documentation, that could help towards this. What do you think about that, Laura? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when it comes to like PTSD as well. They want to see the event that happened that caused, stuff like that. So that can be very, very beneficial as well.
Yeah, it's again, there's this theme playing out. Make sure if it's a legitimate injury caused in training, exercises, combat, make sure that the doctor sees you, it's documented. Hopefully it's treated, right? This is not just about getting a paycheck later. Like, let's actually see if we can fix these things. Right. And then when the time comes, whether it's 20 years, 30, whatever, you have a process of going through the VSO, and we've talked a lot about that, and I've shared a lot about that as well.
Yeah.
But, go ahead, please.
Oh, and double check stuff. When you go to the doctors, double check. When you get your evaluations, double check that. Like, hey, you should probably put this in here too. Remember that time? Make this. Nobody's going to care as much as you do about what's in your records. So it's up to you to make sure that everything in there is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so true. And it's not that we don't care. Like, I genuinely care about my teammates and what they're doing, but it impacts you. And so you have to put the work and time into this. And also, there's only so much people can do for you medically outside of a medical professional, right? I can't take the corporal in and say, let me see his medical record, right? There's law and that sort of thing too. So, as leaders, we've got to give our teammates the time to go do this and make sure they understand how important it is. So, and another great comment there, potentially using awards and evaluations, that may allow you to increase your percentage. Maybe it is. Again, I'm not a believer in hunting for the percentage. I didn't hunt for a percentage. I just, hey, here are my issues and injuries. And quite frankly, I was stunned at the process. I found it when you plan and when you took the time to do it right, scheduled your appointments. As this is talking, now I'm retired, now I'm seeing the VSO. And actually, I allotted myself more time than I needed, and it went really well. And I know a lot of people haven't had that experience. I did. I had good experience with the VA. I've had great folks like you and others come to me about CRSC, and I'm working through that now as well. What's the timeline someone can expect if they say, okay, I just heard from Laura, I'm going to get my stuff together and start processing? How long does this take for someone to start seeing compensation if it's approved?
It depends on what branch of service. So right now, I believe the Navy and Marines, they're about 12 to 15 months. So by the time you submit and by the time that, they adjudicate your claim and send it to DFAS, it's about 12 to 15 months. Army, I believe it's running around 5 months. And Air Force comes in with a win at like 3 weeks to a month. So it just really depends. I know it just depends. And
is that a capacity issue? Is that, and I'm not poking fun at anyone, but maybe on the ground side, they had more folks to be seen. I don't know. Or is it just something else?
I think it's an issue because if you, especially the ones that have, longer timelines, because if you submit something and you have to wait over a year to get a response, that's taking time away.
Yeah.
that's a long time to get a response back. But I know they try hard. They all try hard. I know everybody that works there is, really cares about the service members. It's just, um, the Air Force has just got it going on.
Well, I hope my airman Joe Bass isn't listening to that. I don't want her head to explode, but the Air Force is doing good things, and I appreciate that. I appreciate anyone that's taking care of their people. We got a couple other services out there, right? Have you dealt with the Coasties on this? I know they're a unique case here. Does this apply to them? And Space Force is pretty new, but
Yes.
Most people that are retired from the Space Force today were in a different service.
Yeah.
Does this apply to them, and how do they go about it?
Yeah, it applies to all of them as well. So whichever one they fall under, Space Force, I think it's Air Force, that probably falls under that one. Coast Guard, probably Navy, Marines. But yeah, so, and then once the your branch of service adjudicates your claim, they're going to send that to DFAS, okay? Because they don't handle the payment. So they're going to send that to DFAST. Usually about 30 days, you should receive like your initial payment for it, or you should get a letter in the mail stating, hey, this is how much you'll be getting for CSRC. Or if you are like a 20-year regular retiree receiving that CRDP, they're going to give you like a breakdown. Like, hey, this is your CRDP. Here's your CSRC. And it's going to give you a breakdown of the payment, like which one do you want to take? And there's always an open season once a year, usually in January, that you can kind of switch back between the two. And for once you get your initial payment, if you're entitled to back pay, it's usually another 30 days after that to receive your back pay.
Okay. All right. Sage is bringing the heat here. Great question, because, and I know we've talked about this, but let's break this down because folks really get caught up on this. Laura, I'm going to read it because some folks, they're out on their PT run or something, listen to this, who knows. But okay. Can you clarify, is a retiree with over 20 years of service who happens to be rated 100% permanent in total eligible for CSRC? Let's tackle that, and then we'll go into the next piece of it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. If so, is the CSRC percentage applied to their pension?
No.
Okay. So his example is monthly pensions, $4,000, CSRC's 50%, new monthly pension, $2,000 of the $2,000 of the $4,000 is tax-free. Is that no, that's not how that works.
No.
Okay.
So the payment, that's where a lot of people get confused about. And if you call your branch of service about the payment, they're going to send you to DFAS. If you call DFAS about anything CSRC, they're going to send you to the branch of service. So that's why I like to kind of put it all together. Okay. So the CSRC payment is the same as your VA disability with dependency status. Okay. So if your 100% VA is, let's say, $4,000, okay, 100% CSRC is going to be $4,000, okay? But it also has to go with your retirement, what you're receiving for retirement. And it's going to pay whichever one is the least amount, okay? So let's say your VA or your 100% CSRC, which is the same as the VA 100%, is $4,000, but your retirement is $3,000. The most you're going to get is $3,000. Okay. So if, let's say, you're maxed out, to make it beneficial, you need 100% CSRC, and let's say you get 90%. Let's say that percentage for CSRC is, or that payment is, I don't know, let's say $2,000 for 90%. Okay. But you're receiving $3,000 for retirement. It doesn't mean that $2,000 or whatever I said, $3,000 is $2,000 is going to be tax-free. The rest is not. You're going to lose money at that point. Okay. So again, let's say your retirement or your 100% CSRC is $4,000. Your retirement is $3,000. The most you can get is this, okay? And if you're, let's say 90% is, $2,000, you're going to be losing $1,000 out of your retirement.
So again, I mean, I'll summarize this for simplicity is it's case by case dependent.
It is.
You need to sit down with that expert and see what makes the most sense for you. Obviously, it makes no sense to take the option where you're making less money.
Yeah, you have to figure out what percentage CSRC is going to be beneficial for you. Right. And anything under that, you're going to lose money, basically. Right. Yeah.
The good news is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, is if you go through the process and you apply and then you realize that that percentage is not what you wanted or it wouldn't make financial sense, you don't have to take it. Is that accurate?
It's risk-free. Yeah. Yeah. It's not going to affect your VA disability if you apply for CSRC. It's not gonna affect your payment either, because you're gonna have that opportunity to decide, if you want to continue with like your regular retirement or CSRC. You get to choose. And let's say you choose one and then next year you're like, I want to go back to the other one. There's an open season every year, so it's not permanent.
Yeah. No, it's really, again, that's why I wanted to have you on here, because even after our conversation, I ran into, I had a conversation with one of my Marines. He's living in, I believe, Minnesota now. We used to work together at MARSOC, and I hadn't talked to him in years. We spent an hour talking about this. And interestingly enough for him, he told me how easy this process was. But I've heard from others in the Marine Corps who have given me greater than 15-month stories and much longer than that. So
it was like 18. Yeah.
Yeah. So who knows? And at the end of the day, I don't know there's much we can do to control that. But what we can do is to make sure we're talking to an expert about this to see what makes most sense for us based on our conditions. We're documenting our medical situation, and then we're submitting the paperwork and executing the process and having a copy for us as well. Yes. Are there any common mistakes you see with folks doing this that delay them getting notification of their rating or their
if their claim gets sent back for something? Let's say they fill out the claim form, they use a wrong signature. Always wet sign it. I always tell people wet sign it. You can't go wrong because the signatures change, or they didn't fill it out properly. That's probably like the most common mistake that people make, is not filling out the claim properly. And then they got to get it sent back, and then they have to, resend it in once they fix it. So that can really hold up the timeline. And sending in all your medical records is not helpful. They just want to see your initial treatment records that apply to the conditions that you're applying for, any awards, any sort of write-ups like that, anything that pertaining to those conditions that are going to be helpful. But they don't need all of your medical records, because they look through all of those. So, you're taking a lot of time just to look through one person's claim when they're sending in thousands of documents.
Yeah. So a geek like me who spent a lot of years in nice offices, don't submit the paper cuts. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
Not worth it. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair point. Maybe in my early days in the Corps when I was doing the grunt work. So awesome. Now, again, you've been in this field a while. You advise folks on a variety of things. When do you, based on what you see, let's take the individual who's not retiring but getting out. When should they start thinking about things like TSP, SGLI, like all these other things, and when should they go to see an expert?
2 years out, if they can. That's usually the best time, because you're not really going to all those appointments and stuff. The younger you are, the healthier you are before you go to all your VA appointments, the better rating you're probably going to get. Okay. Especially when it comes, like, if you were interested in like life insurance, and there's so many different options out there. But you just got to know, I explain to everybody like what life insurance is, the different types, and break down, like we have our company, we have a great transition workbook that breaks down SBP, that really shows you, like, for example, when my husband retired, E8, almost 21 years, if we were to take the full SBP, which we did initially, if he were to pass away, I was only going to be receiving $1,600 a month, but that's taxed. It's considered earned income, which I didn't know. So you go from retirement and disability to, as a, family and everything, and then $1,600 a month taxed. People don't really know that. I'm not, so having something, at least something else in place to kind of help supplement that, or, I try my hardest to get people better rates, independent. So I work with many different insurance companies to try, like, oh, you got PTSD, or, you got this going on. Let's try this company because they're more forgiving. Oh, you're a smoker. Oh, this one's great for smokers. All of those things. But probably about 2 years out is when you should really start thinking about it.
Yeah. And, I think back to my first term, I was not even thinking of these things. Oddly enough, my first term was right down the road at New River, but, and the operational tempo. So understanding it's hard. To Brandon's point earlier, difference between being seen, documented, he had another step in there as well. But if it's a legitimate injury, I mean, if you got a headache, okay, roger that. Maybe you get some Tylenol or whatever the doctor gives you. But if it's something legitimate, rolled an ankle in a field exercise, something like that, those things don't get better when you're 65, 85. And so making sure they're documented for them, for your family, that's when it matters right now. It quite frankly, I'm at the beginning stage of this myself, so I don't really see much of it. I got my glasses and I got some other things through the VA and through TRICARE. But I'm thinking about this when I'm 65, when I'm 75, and how that's going to alleviate stress from my family. So having that long-term perspective, which we often don't have when we're younger, is critical here. So, Laura, you mentioned something as well, and I need to reiterate, and then I want to dive into this in the little time we have left, is money is not real. And what I mean by that is it's after taxes that matter. And, I hear a lot of people talk to me, hey, we got this 6-figure job up in DC, or we got this. It's not real money. You need to account, when you plan this out, the fact that you're going to pay X amount of percent in taxes. Your cost of living is going to be, depending on the area, it could be a lot higher, state taxes, all these other things. And so by the time you get that 6-figure job, you may be in the $50,000. It really gets absorbed quickly. And so your point is one I hope people listen to. SBP could be a wise decision. It could be. But think about it and understand that the money your spouse or your children are going to get based on the decision you all come to is going to be taxed. And so know what that number is, not the fake number. That number is irrelevant. It's what do I have? What's tangible? Can you talk about that? Because I don't think a lot of veterans and service members know that.
I didn't. I didn't. And it's, to be paying premiums going in and to be taxed going out, that's a lot of money that's just being, that's just being thrown out the door for a little bit of compensation, or benefit, I should say. It's mind blowing to me. I really try to sit down with people, and, if they're not interested in, whatever, or they just don't know which one to take, like, I give them all the information that they need to be able to make a decision that's right for them and their family. And whether that's, sticking with SBP and BJLI or taking life insurance, I just want to walk away knowing that they have all the information that's right for them.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. We got my shipmate of the year. I got Veronica on here. I've never met her, but she's killing it as a Navy recruiter for the reservists. And she just made me think about that.
Yeah.
Where does CRSC play out for our guardsmen and our reservists? Do they have a conversation here about this? If you're in the National Guard or you're a reservist.
Yeah. So you can, they can apply for CRSC as well if they're entitled to receive, they can get CRSC when they're entitled to receive retirement. So if they're medically retired and they can receive retirement at that time, then they can, get CRSC, paid out to them then. If they're not eligible to receive retirement until, retirement age, I forget what that is, maybe 62, then they can start getting CRSC at that point.
Okay. Yeah, that's important to know because I have these conversations a lot. I've got friends that were in the reserves, certainly a ton that were in the National Guard. And I don't always understand it all. It's very challenging. Heck, I don't understand half of the stuff. That's why I bring on experts like you. I don't understand half of it for someone that, just did a routine 30 years, nice and easy 30 years in the Marine Corps. But I'm being facetious there. But the Guard and Reserve, they do have different rules. And again, that's why, regardless of your status, I highly recommend you find an expert and sit down with them and talk to them about all of these things. Because it's so nice to know going in that the day you're retired, the day you're out, you can expect X. And as I have my conversation with my CPA or someone that's helping me do some of the payroll things for me in my business now, I let them know, hey, that, short of some catastrophe here in the country, that's consistent. That money will always be here so long as I'm alive. Here's the other stuff. And so we can plan things out, state taxes, federal taxes, as Veronica mentioned, property taxes, which, I'm from New Hampshire, live free or die, right?
Me too, Scott. Me too.
Yep. We connect in our tribe.
Yeah.
But what is New Hampshire? They got a nice bumper sticker. This isn't political, live free or die, but they got the highest property taxes in America.
Yes.
Number 50. And so my point is that somewhere they're going to get you. They're going to get you. You just have to calculate all that into it and know what your dollar signs look post taxes. Pre-taxes, it can look pretty.
So pretty.
Yeah. If you're taking 40% or something after you get state property, you name it. Some states will tax you based on your vehicles, right? You got to pay different taxes for every car you have too.
Yep.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm not advocating for one or the other. You have to make the choice, whether you want to live in a beautiful place like San Diego, but it's going to cost you a couple dollars.
Yeah.
Maybe somewhere cheaper down south. So it's all up to you.
Yeah.
Laura, we're going to slowly run out of time here. I want to make sure there's a lot of things that I don't know. Is there anything that you either want to clarify or something that I didn't ask you that we need service members to understand?
There's so many benefits out there for you. Just, it's do a little bit of research, talk to people. Scott, you're a great resource. There's so many great resources out there. I try to help people as much as I can to understand their benefits and go over it with them for just that it pertains to them. So like when I have a conversation with someone about CSRC, TSHLI, or, life insurance, that conversation is catered specifically to them. Go over the numbers, whatever it might be. Get with somebody. I'm always here to help. Always here. Always willing to help whenever I can. But yeah, just.
Yeah, and I won't go into this, Laura. You've got a lot going on in your own life, and you are just a true gem, an incredible person, a kind, caring individual. I don't even remember how we connected. I think I reached out to you as an expert, and you've been responsive. And so if someone is interested, and so thank you very much. And for someone that may be listening, if they're interested, do you have a way for them to contact you and potentially employ your services?
Yeah, for right now, if you can find me on LinkedIn, send me a message. I'm working on a website. Hopefully that should be done here pretty soon. they can contact me when I have that up and running. But in the meantime, send me a LinkedIn message. I'll send you a calendar link if you want, and we can kind of go over stuff that's specific to them, whatever that might be.
Awesome. Sam, I am not going to touch conversations about the exes. That's in all seriousness, she mentioned her ex bought back 20 years active duty towards dual status ART, and she had no clue what that was. I'll be honest, most of us don't. So apparently this individual has reserve and civilian retirement now, 2 retirement packages. Again, there are a lot, right? Certainly, I don't have the expertise on the civilian side. One day I may bring someone on because I have a lot of folks that served and now are civilians, and I'll be looking for that expert. So thank you there, Sam. And then James, for your comments, really appreciate it. Appreciate everyone's comments. Any closing thoughts, Laura, before I make my closing thoughts and then talk about the next show?
I don't know. Just thank you for having me, Scott. And thank you for all that you do for the veterans and service members as well. It's really important. You share a lot of information that's really helped other people. And, the best that we can do, everybody can do, is share the information that we know to help our military community and be stronger than ever.
I appreciate it, Laura. I remember talking to an individual that got into the insurance business. He had reached out to me and he was selling me on all this stuff. And I said, brother, the one thing you don't understand is you're not selling insurance. You got to sell trust. And, when I have this show, this is an opportunity because I didn't want to do the traditional podcast where you edit it. And I wanted to be raw and real. I wanted to be right here so people can chime in, and it'll be there later for folks to listen to if they want to and they missed it. And I'm still learning as I go through this process and getting better at it. But it's genuine, right? There will never be a time where I accept a penny for doing something like this. This is for me to give back. I just, I love this country. This isn't a political thing. I love our people. I love what we stand for and our service members. I just had a teammate. I won't get into this too much because I'll lose my bearing, but took his life a couple weeks ago, a fellow E9, and it's heartbreaking. And so however we can help out, wherever we can help, we need to lend a hand, lend knowledge, expand the wisdom, increase opportunities for men and women, all of the folks that are on here. That's what I'm all about. And so Laura, having an expert like you on today, thank you so much. And for those of you that only caught a little bit of this, you want to know more, reach out to Laura. She'll point you in the right direction, or potentially you can do business with her as well. So again, thank you. My next show. So I'm going to continue to do this. My July got a little bit crazy. I've got a lot of travel, and my daughters are going to be starting kindergarten and preschool soon. So I've got some things going on. I'm taking them on vacation on Friday. So my next show is not going to be until the 6th of August. Again, at 6 p.m. I'll talk to you about who that's going to be later, not today, but later on. But I will tell you this: this is an individual who I admire so much, who got out of the military and started his own business. And I will tell you, if we started giving people rank for post-service, this guy would be a 5-star general. He is killing it. He's doing so much out there. I want to talk to him. I want folks to see that they too have an opportunity to do more, to become more. They don't have to be beholden to the rank that they once were. So he will be a great guest. Again, that'll be on the 6th of August. And then lastly, my book, not my book, the book of the week, Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blount. I would offer to you, if you're in the business and trying to grow clients, my coach gave this back to me and recommended to me. I took it on. It's a fantastic book. It talks to you about how to grow clients, how to grow customers. Again, remembering that the first thing that you do, my opinion, is you got to sell trust. All right. So Laura, again, thank you very much. For everyone that attended today, thank you for attending. If you have ideas on content or guests you want to be on the next show, send them to me. Okay, everyone. Until then, thank you and have a good night.